Hello and welcome back to the Palancar podcast, where we are diving into Christopher Paolini's inheritance cycle, starting with the first book, Eragon. Today we are going to be going over the third chapter, Dragon Tales. This is a pretty cool chapter to me. It's got a lot of lore later on, and I'm really excited to talk about that. So much so that I'm kind of planning on doing a second part for this video where I just talk about the backstory of King Galbatorix and kind of where the Empire is and how it got there as of right now. The first part I'm going to be going over is basically Eragon he's going to travel with his uncle and his cousin back to the village, and he's going to meet up with the traders, and they're going to try to talk about the egg a little bit and see if it's kind of worth anything or not. This chapter starts off at dawn the next day. The rays streamed through the windows, warming Eragon's face. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up at the edge of his bed. As he's waking up in the morning, he's looking around his room and he's kind of being glad that he's home, and he's reflecting on the past and where he's come from. He knows very little about his past. He knows that his mother's name was Celine. He doesn't know who his father was, and he was thinking it's close to being 16 years when his mother came back into the village. She was already pregnant with Eragon, and she was very lavishly dressed. No one really knew where she got her finery from or how she got pregnant. She didn't talk about that. She just was in the village for about 6 months, had Eragon, and right after Eragon was born, she begged Eragon's uncle Garrow and his wife Marion to raise Eragon because she had to leave. She couldn't take him. They didn't understand why. They begged her to stay. They tried to get her to tell her what was going on, or to tell them what was going on, and she wouldn't. As soon as Garrow and Marion agreed to take Eragon, the next day she was gone. She just left and never came back, and has since never been heard from. So Aragon's waking up and he's thinking about his mother, and he's wondering about where he came from. And he's thinking to himself, I'm sure there was a good reason for what she did. I only wish I knew what it was. I'm sure that anybody that's been in that situation would understand that. And he's bothered by the fact that he doesn't know who his father is, and he doesn't know where his lineage is from, and he doesn't necessarily have a name to himself, and he's bothered by that fact. As he's kind of waking himself up, he's splashing water on his face and he's rubbing his neck. He walks out to greet his uncle Garrow and his cousin that morning. And his cousin's standing there. He was 2 years older than Eragon, muscular, sturdy, and careful with his movements. They could not have been closer, even if they really were brothers. Roran smiled at him and said, I'm glad you're back. How was the trip? And Eragon tells him that it was hard. He explains about finding the egg, and Roran asks to see it. So he gets up and he goes and he grabs it and he shows it to him. And they're kind of wondering where it came from. And, he explains the story about taking it to the butcher, and what happened with Sloane and how Sloane was going to trade for it. And then as soon as he found out that it was from the spine, he shoved it back in Eragon's face and demanded that he get out. As they're talking, Roran actually asks if he got the chance to talk to Sloane's daughter Katrina, and asked him if he was able to give her the message. And remember, the message was that he basically thinks of nothing else but her, and he was excited to see her when the traders came to town. And Eragon says, no, but I was able to give it to Horst, and he said that he was going to give it to her. And Roran is kind of just like, yo, not cool, dude. What the heck? I told you to give it to her and you gave it to somebody else. That's not cool, man. And Eragon is kind of bashful, and he's like, well, I'm sure that he's going to give it to her and it's not going to be any kind of problem. I'm sure. So as the days go by, Garrow, Roran, and Eragon, it's 9 days pass from the time when Eragon comes home until the point where we're at right now. And over that time, they've just been doing chores around the house, feeding their animals, gathering their harvest. They're waiting for the traders to come into Carvajal, where they can go and where they actually get most of their supplies for the coming year. The village of Carvajal does have a lot of the stuff that they do need, but it is better to get the resources from the traders. There's a larger variety of stuff that they can actually choose from them when they come into town. They save all their money throughout the year, and they gather up a surplus of their supplies, and they bring it with them, and they use it to trade, and they buy other goods and stuff from the traders when they're in. So 9 days have passed, and there has been no sign of the traders up on the road. Every day at dawn, Roran runs up to the road to see if there's any tracks, and from what they've seen so far, there's nothing. And they're worried about the traders being stuck up in the mountains and on the roads. There was word from the villagers of Carvajal when Eragon was there that there had been Urgles and raids, and the roads had been just dangerous, and it was freezing outside at the moment. So they were worried that they weren't going to be able to make it that year. It got to the point where Garrow finally said, "You know what? We can't wait any longer. Tomorrow morning, whether they're here or not, we're going to go to town, and we're gonna do what we can. We're going to get what supplies we can." And just by one last ditch effort that night, after they ate dinner, Eragon runs up to the road to see if there was anything there, and sure enough, there were signs of fresh tracks and carts being dragged through the mud. So they were excited because that means that the traders were indeed coming or were made it back into town. So that morning, they packed up their supplies and produce in the wagon before sunrise, and Garrow put the year's money in a leather pouch that he carefully fastened to his belt. Eragon set the wrapped stone between the bags of grain so that it wouldn't roll around when the wagon hit bumps. And obviously, the stone is the item that he did find in the spine. After a hasty breakfast, they harnessed the horses and cleared a path to the road. The trader's wagon had already broken the drifts, which sped along their process. By noon, they could see Carvajal. Now remember, they're about 10 miles away from the village of Carvajal, so I'm sure that it's kind of a haul, dragging all of their gear and their horses and carts through the frozen mud. In daylight, the small earthy village filled with shouts and laughter. The traders had made camp on an empty field near the outskirts of town. Groups of wagons, tents, and fires were randomly spread across it, spots of color against the snow. The troubadours' 4 tents were garishly decorated. A steady stream of people linked the camp to the village. So this is kind of like a festival that really goes on throughout the year at Carvajal. Everyone waits for them to come, and they put on a big show. They have all kinds of festivities that go on. It's basically, like I said, like a carnival's coming to your town. Garrow parked the wagon and picketed the horses, then drew coins from his pouch, from the pouch. Get yourself some treats. Roran, do what you want. Only be at horse in time for supper. Eragon, bring that stone and come with me. Eragon grinned at Roran and pocketed the money, already planning on how to spend it. Roran departed immediately with a determined expression on his face, and Garrow led Eragon into the throng, shouldering his way through the bustle. So obviously, I think Roran's got his mind made up, and he's going to go try to find Katrina and give him the message that Eragon couldn't. As they're walking through as they're walking through the traders, they're noticing that a lot of their gear is worn. They have a lot of haggard expressions. A lot of the men are wearing swords. A lot of the kids look kind of malnourished. And Eragon is wondering what could have made them like this. I guess maybe what the rumors of having trouble on the road were true. He remembered the traders being full of good cheer, but there was none of that now. Garrow pushed down the street searching for Murloc, a trader who specialized in odd trinkets and pieces of jewelry. They found him beneath a booth displaying brooches to a group of women. As each new piece was revealed, exclamations of admiration followed. Eragon guessed that more than a few purses would soon be depleted. Mortlack seemed to flourish and grow every time his wares were complimented. He wore a goatee and held himself with ease, and seemed to regard the rest of the world with slight contempt. Hopefully that doesn't go along with anybody else who has a goatee. Mortlack notices them, and he asks them, what might you sirs want to look at? Do you want to look at a necklace or a trinket for a lady? And he pulls out a necklace, and he says, not even 3 crowns. But this is all the way from Bellatona. And Uncle Garrow tells him, we aren't looking to buy, we're looking to sell. And Mortlack says, okay, what do you have to sell? Maybe you want to trade for something that I have out here. And Garrow says in a firm voice, I he doesn't want to show it to him here. He asked to speak in private with him, away from prying eyes. So Murloc closes up his wares, locks everything up, and he leads them back to his tent to speak with them. Small trinkets and strange pieces of furniture scattered along his tent. 3 seats carved from a tree stump filled the tent. A gnarled dagger with a ruby in the pommel rested on a white cushion. Murloc closed the flap of the tent after they came in and said, "Please seat yourselves." Once they get inside and they sit down, Murloc asks them to see what it is that they're meeting in private about. Garrow gives Eragon a look and nods to him. Eragon pulls out the stone and puts it on the table in front of Murloc. Murloc looks at it and he asks, well, what is it that I'm looking at? And Eragon tells him that he doesn't know. He just found it. Murloc starts to test it. He pulls out some tools and utensils, and he's tapping it with a hammer. He's drawing like razor blades over it. He's doing what he can to figure out what it is that this thing is made out of. At the end of his testing, he sits up and he looks at him and he says, well, I have no clue what this is. The only thing that I can tell you is that whoever shaped it used tools I don't possess. This thing is harder than diamond. I don't even know if I could break this if I took a sledgehammer to it. And Garrow asks him, okay, well, like, do you know if it's worth anything? And Murloc says, I'm sure that it is, because obviously somebody wouldn't go through with the effort in shaping it if it wasn't worth anything. And Garrow asks him, okay, well, will you buy it from us? And Murloc says, this isn't something that I'm going to be able to sell right away. This is something that I don't even know if I'll be able to get anything for it. It's better that you guys hold on to it. We don't know what it is anyway. So because of that, they really don't know what to do with it. They just put it away, and Murloc asks them, why is it that you wanted to meet in private about this? I don't understand. Like, what is this? And Eragon as he puts the stone away, he looks at him and he says that he found it in the spine. And Murloc kind of just looks at him, and he asks them, oh, well, do you know why it is that myself and my companions were all late this year? And they tell him, like, well, we've heard rumors, but we didn't know if they were true. And Murloc tells them there's been raids from the Varden, there's Urgles that have come down from the mountains, and that there are even rumors of a shade that have been walking the land. And because of this, the traders and the travelers and their group had a lot of issues on the road, and a lot of issues at the cities that they came to, where they were found that they were either burned down or deserted. Garrow doesn't believe him. He says, nonsense. How can this be possible? We haven't heard anything about this. If you're the first people that are coming in and you're telling us about it, how are we supposed to believe you? And Murloc tells him, well, you guys are in a very small village. You are protected on all sides from the mountains. You have it good. You have it good here. They continue their conversation. As they talk, Murloc tells them more about what's going on, and they basically start to pack up their stuff, and they start to leave. Eragon was impatient for evening when the troubadours would come out and tell their stories, to perform their tricks. He loved hearing about magic, gods, and if they were especially lucky, the dragon riders. Carvajal had its own storyteller, Brom, a friend of Eragon's, but his tales grew old over the years, whereas the troubadours always had new ones that he listened to eagerly. So at this point, Eragon and Garrow, they're done talking with the traders. Garrow wants to go and kind of do a little bit of shopping for himself, or not for himself, but for the family and for the things that they need. So he tells Eragon to go ahead and go and do whatever it is that he wants to do. So Eragon is happy to leave. He goes and he starts going around. He finds something to eat, and as he's eating a cherry pie, he actually sees Sloane. And he doesn't want to talk to Sloane, so he ducks off and he goes into a tavern. He goes into Morn's Tavern, and as he goes into Morn's Tavern, he gets greeted, and he tells him that the The traders that are in the bar currently are talking all kinds of tales, and they're upsetting the people because they bought the villagers' grain at ridiculously low prices, and Eragon is not having that. He says people need that money. We can't get by without it. And he asks Morn what kind of stories they're telling, and Morn tells them they say that the Varden have formed a pact with the Urgles and are massing an army to attack us. Supposedly, it's only through the grace of our king that we've been protected for so long, as if Galbatorix would care if we burned to the ground. Go listen to them. I have enough on my hands without explaining their lies. So this is a little bit of an insight as to how the villagers of Carvajal actually feel about the king and the empire at the current state. He doesn't believe a single thing that he's saying. The traders are telling him the only reason that they're safe at the moment is because King Galbatorix's good rule and protection is what's keeping them safe. Eragon goes over to them and he starts listening, and the trader says, "No, you don't understand. It's only through the king's unceasing efforts on your behalf that you were able to argue with us in safety. If he, in all of his wisdom, were to withdraw that support, woe unto you." Someone hollered, "Right, why don't you also tell us the riders have returned, and you've each killed 100 elves? Do you think we're children to believe your tales? We can take care of ourselves." And the group chuckled. Yeah, so they're not having it. None of them are real supporters of the Empire or the King. The traders go on and they're talking more, and it says, "Okay, we get it. You're angry because the Empire treats people unfairly. That's a legitimate concern. However, governments aren't able to make everybody happy, and there's always going to be some small group of people that are unhappy with the current state." And a woman calls out, "If you can call the Varden a small group, I don't really know." And the trader shoots back, saying that the Varden are just a group of full-hearted people who want to overthrow the king and steal everybody's lands, which is obviously not true. He's just brainwashed by the establishment. Eragon did not agree with the trader's words. Eragon did not agree, but the trader's words were smooth, and and some of the people were nodding. He stepped forward and said, "How do you know this? I can say that the clouds are green, but that doesn't mean it's true. Prove you aren't lying." And that's pretty brave of him. Obviously, he's a 15-year-old kid stepping forward in a group of grown-ups, and I'm assuming people who were drinking and talking the breeze in a bar. He steps up and he challenges him, and the room goes quiet, and the traders are kind of looking around and they're like, "You guys, this is like normal? You guys let kids step up and say what they want to adults?" And one of the men in the village hollers at him and says, "Answer the question. He asked you a question. Answer it." And well, he responds back, "It's only common sense." And Eragon kind of rolled his eyes and he turned and he left because he could kind of tell where the situation was going. And from there, he makes his way over. He finds Roran, who is with Katrina, and in a back alleyway, and they're talking. And before he walks over to him, Roran's whispering in her ear, and then he kind of kisses her on the cheek, and she runs away. And Roran walks over, and they walk together over to Horse House, and they have dinner together. And after dinner, or they meet Garrow at Horse, and Horse is the blacksmith, and he's one of the village leaders again. And they meet at his house, and they have dinner. And after dinner, all of the candles in the village are lit, and they have all the torches up, and there's bonfires lit, and they all make their way over to the traders' camp to listen to the troubadours, and to listen to the bards, and to listen to the stories and the music that goes on at night. The troubadours came tumbling out of their tents, dressed in tasseled clothes, followed by older and more stately minstrels. The minstrels provided music and narration for the younger counterparts acted out the stories. So they're going over and they're singing, they're dancing, they're telling stories. It's a good time. And eventually, at some point through the night, the village storyteller Brom, he steps forward and he begins to tell them a tale. And right here is where I'm going to call this video done. I'm going to cover more of what Brom talks about in part 2 of this chapter. I hope that you have come along with me, and I hope that you've enjoyed the first part of this. And from here on out, it's going to get much more interesting. So please stay tuned for part 2. And thank you for watching.